This is Fathering.
This is Dave.
And this is Tex Trek.
Howdy, y'all.
Engage.
So we're drinking on the show now.
It seems more Texan, right?
Yeah.
Are we toasting? Nice.
Yeah, don't leave me hanging. So this is the show all about Star Trek Discovery. This is actually going to be the first installment in what I hope is a long series of videos dedicated to finding out about Discovery. Or discovering
Oh
Discovery.
My God. I'm done with this podcast.
Oh, sit your ass down. So this is a big deal.
It's pretty big.
Like to quote Vice President Joe Biden, this is a big fucking deal.
It is. It is. You know, how big a deal is it?
Pretty big. Like we haven't had Star Trek on TV in over a decade. Like this is like when Led Zeppelin got back together for a reunion tour. Big deal.
That's pretty big.
Like this is like when you hear on the radio President Roosevelt tell you that the Japanese have bombed Pearl Harbor.
Oh my God, I remember that.
I didn't know you were that old.
Whoa. I'm definitely going to get out of this fucking podcast.
No, this is like, to make it more recent, this is like when the president has told the world Osama bin Laden has been shot and killed. Big deal.
This is a get excited big deal.
Very exciting. This is like when you find out that the actor from Kung Fu liked to choke himself while jacking off in a hotel closet in Bangkok and then actually died like that.
Yeah! Hell yeah.
That was a big deal.
No, you're right. That's an excellent point. But, you know, I feel like the audience for his jerking off thing is going to be different from Star Trek.
I don't know. There's some weird Trekkies out there. Regardless,
we should definitely do a show about that at some point.
The Trekkie weirdness?
Yeah.
Maybe.
But yeah, so what are we covering with Discovery? What do we got?
Well, as of recording, right now, we've just learned that the Discovery air date has been pushed back from January to May. Some people are a little disappointed in that. I, however, think that's great news because I didn't want the show to be rushed, and I felt like it's September now. January is fast approaching. That's not a lot of time to get a show shot, go through pre-production, and get it on the air.
I mean, this is one of those things where if you drop the ball, you're screwed. They've got their weird pay system for it. They need it to come off. It needs to be a success. So, yeah, I'm for them taking extra time.
Yeah, and Star Trek has a history of needing a couple seasons to really get off the air and get going. It doesn't really hit the ground running like this show is going to need to. So no pressure, Bryan Fuller, but you can't mess it up. You gotta hit it out the park on the.
You can't wait till
pitch.
Riker has a beard.
Right. Yeah. There's not going to be any 2 bad seasons, a 3rd season showing improvement, and then a good 4th season.
Nope. It's got to hit the ground running. And, you know, that's the standard for TV now. And Fuller at least knows that. I mean, we're going to go over the kind of the basics about this, including talking about Fuller. But at least one of those is this guy's done Hannibal. He's done, what are his other big shows?
Pushing Daisies.
Dead Like Me. Right. So in that modern format where you get going right out of the gate, he knows what he's doing on that.
For sure. And we're actually going to go ahead and talk about everything we know about Star Trek Discovery up until this point. If you want to see just a good collection of this information, I recommend checking out the website trekmovie.com. They have a really cool infograph that is basically just a collection of all the announcements. It's fairly up to date, and I'll post a link to it in the description.
We're not affiliated with them, we should say.
Not at all.
They're just good guys.
Yeah.
They've got good info. It's actually a really nice infographic, specifically. And it's going to be... That's kind of was the basis for what we're covering. So shall we jump in?
We shall.
All right, let's do this thing.
So just to talk about Bryan Fuller, he seems like a really great guy to be running a Star Trek show. He's been talking for years. I remember, maybe 5-6 years ago, hearing him say how he had an idea for a Star Trek show. So,
oh, really? I didn't know it went back that far.
Yeah, this is something he's been thinking about for a long time. He has a history with Star Trek. He has 2 credits on Deep Space Nine, a lot of credits on Voyager.
Right.
He says that he grew up in the 70s.
You know, some people didn't like Voyager. They're gonna be like, he worked on Voyager.
He was on the later seasons when it was actually
the stronger stuff.
So.
Yeah.
But he grew up in the 70s watching TOS, and he has said that he wanted a Star Trek show that got back in touch with the funner, more colorful roots of Star Trek dating back to the 1960s.
Definitely good by me. That's kind of my... That's my touchstone. So yeah, I'm down with that for sure.
And that's probably why this show is going to be set about 10 years before the original series, is what they've said. So, original series is mainly considered to be starting in the year 2265. The show is going to be in 2255, around the same time as the original pilot, The Cage, that had Jeffrey Hunter as Captain Pike.
Yeah.
So that's the time period we're looking at. Other things that we know, let's start with the...
And by the way, that time period, so you have Enterprise where they were just kind of getting off the ground, getting out into space, space sort of as a literal sort of frontier for them. Then the original series that was kind of exploring that frontier in particular, they were much more out there. And this is going to be like right on the cusp of that. But it'll have something in common, probably more with Enterprise and TOS, at least... not philosophically, but as far as like exploring, being that sort of more rough and tumble era.
For sure, yeah, it's definitely going to be the same kind of time period. So I would think like the same type of setting,
right,
as the original series.
And the Federation is not going to be sort of the powerhouse maybe it was in Picard's era, which it was not that it was nothing in Kirk's era, but it seemed like they'd particularly gotten their act together by the time Picard rolled around.
For sure, they've probably also recruited a lot more member worlds by then.
Right.
But just let's talk about the characters for a little bit.
Let's do it.
Not that we know too much about that, but we've been told that there's going to be about 7 characters. The real interesting thing here is the main character is going to be a human female lieutenant commander. There's going to be lots of aliens. There's going to be a LGBT character, and some... character will be the captain, but it won't be the primary character.
That's the hugest break from tradition.
That's the biggest departure.
Sure. Do you think this is a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing?
That's one of the things that makes me a little nervous, because that is such a departure from just the format of Star Trek. It's always been like the universal way that it's been written and handled. I'm open-minded though, so I will definitely go into it cautiously optimistic, but I don't know. That does seem like a kind of a weird idea.
Well, it's always that sort of the Type A, the big boss guy who's running the show on Star Trek. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to think. Is there anything else like in other movies or something like that where the central guy is not the lead character, is not the most powerful guy? So, something in like a movie with like other military ranks or anything like that. And I mean, I guess this is such a weird analogy. Like in Independence Day, you don't have you have some generals and stuff, but they zero in on like Will Smith and some fighters, some ground. You've got lower tier people that are major characters.
I was actually thinking Top Gun, so that's weird that you went Independence Day.
Something with fighter pilots.
But she's a lieutenant commander, so that's no small fry on the ship. The lieutenant commander is normally the 3rd highest ranking officer on board. Data was a lieutenant commander.
So this is not going to be some like it's not going to be the janitor in the hallway and their adventures with this occasional alien.
Yeah, this isn't going to be the Next Generation Lower Decks. You know, she's going to be almost certainly a member of the senior staff, the senior officers.
I wonder if they would ever do anything like, you know how they've with The Office and other shows like that, they do that thing where, you know, they'll talk to the camera.
Star Trek Workplace.
Yeah.
I hope not.
I mean, I don't think they would, but there could be other contrivances where, you know, this person is, I think, going to be introducing us to the thing, to the crew, and it would be there's, you know, there's diary devices, there's all sorts of other ways you can do that kind of thing,
like a captain's log or an officer's log.
It's true, but those are so formal, right? You know, you
they have
do
a personal log also.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, and maybe that'd be the most interesting way to do it. That'd still keep it very Trekky.
I definitely hope that they do keep that type of framing device where you recap what happened right before the scene with the officer's log, or you know, get into the character's head.
Right. You can also sort of begin in media res with that. So you're like, you know, officer's log. We're in orbit around such and such. You know, the captain's being a pain in the ass and he wants results.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff you can explore by taking the focus off of the captain. You could potentially have like an asshole captain or a more flawed captain, and
you know, I think we talked about this a little bit off camera. The notion that what if this person eventually becomes the captain or something at some point.
Yes, and that's a theory of mine. I think that maybe we'll start with the focus on this character. Maybe the captain or first officer. Maybe they die. Maybe they go insane and they have to you have to have a mutiny. I don't know, but I think there might be a larger reason to why we're focusing on a lieutenant commander.
Did you ever see the old anime Star Blazers, Space Battleship Yamato?
Yes.
You know how like halfway through that the captain Avatar, it was his name, Captain Avatar in the American version. I don't remember what it is in the Japanese version, but he dies, and you know the second in command guy has to step up and become captain. A weird precedent, but you know that was big space opera stuff too.
Yeah, there was something that made him die? Like he fell or like something happened, and he was like so sad and heartbroken. He like laid in bed and died.
You know,
don't do that, Bryan Fuller.
It was wildly melodramatic, so it is quite possible something
anime.
like that happened. But yes, that'd be interesting. But I definitely kind of want to see him explore that notion of a character who's a few tiers down and maybe can be kind of bluntly honest about people through their journal or their log. What else we got?
Well, we do know that the central character is going to be called Number One.
Okay.
There's different theories about this. Some people think that she will be a first officer because that's who people in Star Trek are when they're called Number One.
Right.
Some people think she might be Majel Barrett Roddenberry's character from The Cage. They could possibly
the actual
do
character.
That. The actual character, just with a different actress, of course.
Right. That would be interesting. Yeah, it's a little bit weird to be. Is the first officer usually the first officer is usually the number one? Is that usually the second in command?
Yes.
Whereas lieutenant commander would be third in line. So
your rank and your position, aren't the same.
Right.
Most of the time, your first officer is a commander. The only exception to that, prominently, would be Majel Barrett's character Number One in The Cage. She's called lieutenant, and that's probably because they hadn't figured out the ranking system. If you want to get super esoteric with it, it's because in that episode they were using 19th century British naval ranks instead of 20th century. But
it would be interesting. It'd be interesting if they used her because it's a direct continuity. That's the most interesting thing about that.
And if you didn't know her, if you don't know that character, it doesn't matter.
Right.
She was only in one episode or three, depending on how you look at it, when they reused footage from that episode.
But if somebody wanted to prime themselves for the possibilities, they should probably go and watch The Cage.
Yes, it is on Netflix right now. Watch it.
You mentioned LGBT characters, which is something that seems like Trek has been lacking in for a while.
Right.
They've touched on as a topic, but they've always honestly seemed a little too skittish for my taste about actually diving in and having a lead character.
Yeah, it should have happened by now. To be fair, they have been off the air for a long time, but
right.
Joss Whedon was putting LGBT characters on the CW when Enterprise was on the air. They had their opportunity and they missed it. I'm glad to see they're not going to miss the opportunity again.
Mm-hmm.
And also a lot of alien characters, so they definitely want to make it look like a very diverse,
a little more
cast
cosmopolitan.
I think that's just easier to do now when you can have just because special effects, makeup, everything's cheaper.
Are we going to get a Horda? Oh,
no.
they won't have discovered the Horda yet.
The Horda has not yet been discovered.
Damn it. But yeah, are we talking? But we're talking humanoid aliens, presumably.
That's what I'm thinking.
Andorians or Tellarites or new aliens.
Almost certainly an Andorian.
Man, I want like a pissy Tellarite.
That could get
which sounds like
really
a drink.
annoying really fast. Yeah, that should be like a craft beer in Austin. Pissy Tellarite.
But McCoy was pissy. I mean, I don't mean so pissy that they're like every single thing they flip a table over.
McCoy, I heard the Deep Space Nine writer, Ira Stephen Bear, or Stephen Ira Bear, sorry, Mr. Bear, but he said one time McCoy is the Ferengi of the original series, because when he would write Ferengi characters on Deep Space Nine, they were always the more relatable, like, well, this is weird. Why is this like this? He was trying to write like a modern, like American perspective, and McCoy filled that role in TOS. So maybe we will have someone fill that role in Star Trek Discovery. But we don't really know too much about the characters. One thing we can speculate on is pre-established Trek characters that would be in this time period who could appear on the show.
Yep. You're talking about like characters who would be. Like Q or something like
Q
that.
Or
he's
Sarek
timeless.
of Vulcan.
Yep. And any long-lived race, I guess. So who would that include?
Bryan Fuller retweeted.
Bryan Fuller could be on. Go ahead.
Could be. He could pull like the Alfred Hitchcock and cameo.
He just walks by in every episode.
Ira Stephen Bear had a cameo in the last episode of DS9.
He should be a red shirt or something.
That would be funny. But he retweeted the Bring Guinan Back hashtag when Whoopi Goldberg appeared at the Star Trek Las Vegas this year, and people started circulating the hashtag, where it was Bring Back Guinan. She's a long-lived alien race. She's been to Earth and hung out with Mark Twain, so it wouldn't be weird for her to be around in the 23rd century.
Do you think they'll be wanting to kind of cut ties a little bit, though, with the past and sort of let's establish it on our own with all our own new characters before we get into that?
Yeah, Bryan Fuller actually said he's not going to get into that in Season 1, maybe in Season 2.
I mean, I think that's probably the way to do it if you're going to do it. So what we know about the actual story that I think is most interesting, it's been said, this is an actual quote, "There's an incident, an event in the history of Starfleet that has been talked about but never fully explored." And Bryan Fuller confirmed it won't be Axanar, it won't be the Earth-Romulan War, and it won't be anything to do with Section 31. So we don't know what that can be, but I'm really curious about that. That's interesting that Trek fans, I mean, I'm sure there's a million other theories that have turned up, and there's like a Reddit forum devoted to it, but it's interesting that they haven't ferreted it out. It's notable enough that he says it's like been a topic of discussion, but I guess nobody's pinned it down yet. He said it's not any of those things.
Well, different people have been speculating different stuff. It might be something to do with the Klingons, with the Klingon Cold War that is very prominent in the original series.
Right.
Of course, that wouldn't be as relevant today as it was in the 1960s.
Right. But it's not as if relations with Russia, which they were the analog for, are exactly cozy right now.
Yeah, that's true. We've actually regressed as far as that goes. So maybe that would be a good idea. We have one clue, though. Bryan Fuller said Balance of Terror, the episode. He's a big fan of it. It's basically the submarine combat episode.
Right.
It is a touchstone for Star Trek Discovery's Season 1 story.
Interesting.
One idea I have, and I think this was kind of it's actually a European bottle opener. You gotta open it backwards.
Oh my god. We're going to pause for a moment in these proceedings. I didn't know he had a Ferengi bottle opener. Pray continue.
So, my theory on what this mysterious event that's been mentioned but never explored, we know that there was a temporary alliance between the Klingon and Romulan empires.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was kind of just an explanation to why Romulans are driving Klingon ships around.
Right. A reason for them to reuse some awesome models.
And it later explained why in Star Trek 3 Klingons suddenly have cloaking devices.
Right.
So I think that would be a cool thing to explore, because those, especially in this time period, those are before you have the Borg or the Dominion, anything else, your two big threats to the Federation are the Romulan Star Empire and the Klingon Empire.
The one thing we know that they can't do is show a Romulan directly, because before Kirk's time, nobody knew what a Romulan looked like.
Right.
So,
but sometimes they wear helmets that cover up their ears, and maybe they could show up kind of run by with that helmet on and no one gets a good look.
I would love to see him. Here's the thing: if he can pull it off, I'd love those. I love Klingons. I love Romulans. I'd be totally down with that.
Yeah. I've always, even when I was a wee lad and I first read in the Star Trek Encyclopedia or somewhere that there is this Klingon Romulan team up, basically. I guess, like, you know, coming from a big comic book fan, that's like you know, a supervillain team up, like, oh no, like the Riddler and the Joker together, like Batman's in trouble now.
Right, or the Masters of Evil have formed. Yeah.
And because they have said this would be a little bit of a darker, edgier show, a lot like Star Trek 6, and we'll get more into that in a minute. But Star Trek 6 was very, like, it was a political thriller.
Right.
So what if, like, the focus of the movie is, like, oh, we have to stop this Klingon-Romulan alliance. That's not going to bode well for the Federation. So they're basically trying to sabotage this alliance.
We know that they're going to be working in arcs, like not like Monster of the Week episodes.
Yeah, so this will be a 13-episode, season-long arc. Every episode, according to Bryan Fuller, will have a beginning, middle, and end, so there will be some kind of episodic nature to it. But there's definitely one major story that they're working towards, so that's my theory.
I like it. If your theory comes to pass, I'll be happy.
Do you have anything? Any theories? Any speculation?
I cannot imagine, like, something with the Gorn. I don't know.
We haven't made first contact with the Gorn yet.
Yeah, no, I can't think of anything so big in there, because in the original series, they generally didn't have a strong episode-to-episode mythology continuity going on. So I can't think of anything major that they wouldn't have touched on. Have the Tholians been dealt with?
Yes, they've met the Tholians. They showed up in Enterprise, so they're around. They could definitely use Tholians. They could create a new race, a new antagonist.
Right, I guess it could also be something that was mentioned. Did you say this was mentioned on the original series, or could it be from Enterprise or Next Generation saying, oh, remember this incident back in Kirk's time?
No, I am positive. It has been pointed out that this was something mentioned on the original series.
Okay, so people should watch that too. I'd be interested to hear anybody listening. I want to hear their theories.
Start with The Cage. We already told you to watch it, since that's the first episode, and just keep going. Don't stop. Watch the entire original series, and then come up with a theory. And let us know.
If you get it right, you win the prize. I don't know what the prize is. We'll buy you a beer.
Well, yeah, but you have to come here to get it.
All right, what else we got?
Well, let's talk about the creative talent behind the show. We've mentioned Bryan Fuller. He has a history in Star Trek. He's saying all the right things. I've actually never watched any of his shows.
Yeah, this is funny because I think neither you nor I have really seen his shows. I've seen a little bit of Hannibal.
And I've seen a couple episodes of Heroes. I know he worked on that in some capacity.
Good for the first season. I believe, by all accounts, pretty abominable later. A lot of people watching that on Momentum. Hopefully he was in first season. But I also don't know what all went into why it fell apart. I don't know if that was, the network's fault, the creator's fault. But the stuff I saw in Hannibal was awesome.
Yeah, and
if they are going to end up pushing the envelope on this, which I understand they don't have to adhere to standard network guidelines.
Right.
I don't know what that would mean. Is it going to be sexy Trek? Is it going to be super violent?
They tried that in Enterprise. Maybe they'll bring back the
oil up scenes.
Yeah, where they
decontamination.
Have to oil each other up.
Yep. I was kind of amused by that, to be honest. But You know, when I was a kid and I saw Wrath of Khan, I was a little shocked at the violence in it. It was like the creepy little SETI eels, and also just like the carnage when Khan attacked. I had never seen it depicted that way. Mm-hmm. I'm curious as to whether they'll bring any of that flavor to it.
I think you do that, but you don't do that just constantly. Like,
right.
You do that when it's like a big moment, a big deal.
The interviews I've read with Bryan Fuller, he's indicated that he wants to capture that hopeful spirit. He thinks that this is a good time for, you know, that kind of vibrant optimism that the shows have always represented, except maybe DS9. And DS9 in its own way, maybe? I don't know. That's a gap in my knowledge.
DS9 is a darker show. It's also Bryan Fuller's favorite Star Trek spinoff.
So that may speak to some of what he wants to bring to it. But I suspect he's going to be pushing the optimistic angle. So yeah, I would not expect mangled bodies in episode 1. But I would expect that the violence in it might veer a little harsher than we've expected. It might not just be a red shirt who's lying on the ground with some red mark on their face.
Yeah, it might actually be a character we care about, beam down to a planet and not beam up.
Right.
But other people working on the show, we've talked about Star Trek 6, we've talked about Star Trek 2. Mm-hmm. Nicholas Meyer, I think this is a big deal. He directed both those movies. He's not really known for anything else. He wrote a Sherlock Holmes novel, and that's all I know him for. He's a big fan of classic literature and Shakespeare, apparently, because he likes to make Star Trek movies with very literate villains as the antagonists.
Right. You got Moby Dick quoting Khan and Shakespeare quoting...
you can do it.
I can't say his name.
Yeah.
Because it's not a K.
It's close to a K.
What's it?
General Chang.
General Chang. General So is the mighty
quite.
General So. Yes. But he's basically directed 2 of what many people consider the best Treks.
Yes. And he also wrote part of Star Trek 4, which I consider the best Trek. But 2 and 6 are right behind. It's pretty much a 3-way neck and neck.
That'll be an interesting discussion for another time.
And we'll get into the movies.
But, it's also connective tissue with the past. That is a classic, great Trek writing from the past. So he's producing.
Yes, and I think he's a guy who hasn't done much. Mm-hmm. The only way he's involved, I think, is if Bryan Fuller went to him and was like, "I'm a fan of those movies. I like his approach to Star Trek. I like his grasp of the universe. I want him on board with what I'm doing." And I think that is bloody brilliant. And if that's Fuller's idea, then bravo, sir. That's a great idea.
He also grounded those movies in a lot of humanism. The characters were front and center. They were flawed. Kirk was dealing with aging, dealing with having a son, dealing with his hatred of the Klingons and ability to let a genocide happen to them. So he's got... when Meyer's involved, I expect the characters to have kind of rich arcs and deep, deep emotions to them. Hopefully, that's what he's bringing.
Yeah, I think it is, and I'm also glad that Myers isn't. He's not the one in charge of this, because I want someone with like a little bit more traditional Star Trek type approach in charge. But I definitely want to have the Nicholas Meyer influence on there in a pretty large capacity because of what he has done. So I think that's a good marriage between Fuller and Meyer.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also have Rod Roddenberry involved, the son of Gene Roddenberry.
He directed Did he direct the new thing?
He made a documentary about Star Trek fans. He's very protective of his father's legacy. I don't know how much creative input he'll have, but he seems like a really cool guy. I don't think he'll have like a very large role, but
he's probably a little bit of a figurehead, big picture, Stan Lee kind of guy. Like I want to, give the project my blessing, and therefore, kind of through him the blessing of his father.
For sure,
and make sure at least it adheres to the basics of his philosophy, which is a big reason why people like Trek, and what makes Trek unique.
So just real quick, we're just going to go through the aesthetics of the show. We've gotten a look at the ship. Then we found out that's not how the ship will look. It's being tweaked. It's being changed.
Do you think it's going to be changed a lot? Because that was although not like hyper polished, that first shot of the ship that anybody can find out there on YouTube looked pretty. I mean, that was some work put into that animation and everything.
Yeah, I mean, the animation didn't look great, but they admitted, like, yeah, we rushed that out.
It's funny because I thought it looked good. I guess did it get is our reactions mixed?
I thought it looked almost as good as the CGI in Babylon 5.
What is...
No, I'm exaggerating. I think it looked almost as good as the CGI in Star Trek Enterprise.
Okay.
But, yeah, I didn't think
but
it
design-wise, it's Ralph McQuarrie, who's like this big Star Wars
designed
guru.
all the Star Wars.
He designed Imperial Walkers, and I think like the Millennium
X-Wings,
Falcon.
TIE Fighter. He designed Darth Vader. He
was the guru of Star Wars' visuals, and also worked on some Star Trek design possibilities in the 70s.
Yeah, so the ship design they're using, and we'll have a big picture of it right now, but the ship that he designed was for the movie that never got made, Star Trek Planet of the Titans from the 70s. It basically looks like a Star Destroyer with a Enterprise saucer glued onto the front top part of it.
Or like to me the vibe I got was body of a Klingon ship with this Enterprise saucer section and the nacelles. It did look a little weird. I wasn't in love with it, but it saucer, basic hull. Nacelles, the basics are all there.
I wish it looked a little bit more like a precursor to the TOS Constitution or Connie.
Right. It's a darker color too, right? Not the polished NASA white of
darker color for a darker show.
Whoa. Continue.
Only other thing about the look of the show that we know about, I guess, would be the costumes. He says that it will be a happy transporter accident, he being Bryan Fuller.
Yeah.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that. I'm thinking that means it'll be kind of colorful like the original series, but kind of some traits from later shows.
If it drafts it all off of Enterprise, that was when they still had a slightly more military naval look to it, like modern day naval look to their uniforms.
They're wearing coveralls.
What do you think? I mean, I guess we'll know when we see the first pics.
Personally, I would have been okay if they just used the like tan and light brown and kind of gold colored sweaters from the cage. I can understand
those colors are a little flat.
Well, yeah, like that wouldn't look
Earth tones into the future.
When they thought the show might be in black and white, and they didn't really.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. But yeah, Star Trek is so defined by those, bright primary color uniforms. I'm sure there's going to be some splash of that in there. Like, I almost think they can't ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, he said, like, I want to bring back the fun and color of the original series. So I think part of that will be in the, just visual look of the show. And, we know that the show is going to be distributed very non-traditionally, especially for Star Trek. It's going to be exclusive to CBS Access, CBS's online streaming service, available for a $5.99 a month subscription. If you want commercials, you can get it for $9.99 US dollars. If you don't want commercials,
yes. To me, this is the most contentious thing that they've got going.
Absolutely.
Like the creative side of it all sounds like it's got possibilities. Fuller's great. He's saying, like you said, he's saying all the right things. The spirit of it seems right. I'm a little bit worried about its distribution model.
And I think if
that's why
anything kills the show, I think that's going to be most likely.
This is why I feel like it has to be good. Like, I feel like there's almost no chance of this show just straight up failing, of being just a clunker right out of the gate.
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be good.
Yeah, you can't have your third episode be Code of Honor, where you go to the planet of black people that are all misogynist and tribal and...
yes.
they want to kidnap Tasha Yar.
That is a rough episode. That's a rough one.
At Star Trek Vegas, that was voted the worst episode.
It's bad.
And I can't really argue with that.
Do you think it has to hit the ground running? It's got to be good. And they've got to know it's good in a way to be able to get fully behind it.
And that's why I like that they pushed it back till May, because that's going to give them more time to perfect it. The day of recording today, the President of CBS actually came out and said, and I can't remember the guy's name. He's probably like some corporate asshole and doesn't know anything about creativity or making good programming. But he did say that the producers of Star Trek came to him and begged him to push the show back. They said, we really want to do this right for the fans. We have to make the show meet the expectations. So,
here's the thing. I would expect them to say that whether it's true or not. So we'll see. But it sounds good. It is, I would rather have later and better than rushed and mediocre.
Yeah, and that's basically what he said. I'd rather have the show be late and great than have it be early and shitty.
Yeah. At the same time, I'm super hyped to see, whenever we're going to get our first glimpse of this.
Yes, and we're going to be doing episodes over the next October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, over the next 8 months. Whenever new content is released, when we get the first casting announcements, the first look at the costume sets, we're going to be covering all of that. So definitely a lot to look forward to. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the videos. Please listen to our audio-only podcast. Please visit the site. We definitely have a lot of Discovery content coming up in the near future. And
I'd love to hear just basically what people's thoughts are on it. Are you enthused? Are you trepidatious? What would you like it to be? What would be your ideal launch? What are you thinking about Star Trek Discovery?
Yeah, let us know. Tell us your speculation. Tell us what you're worried about. Tell us what you're excited for. So, just to close, we know that there's going to be some tie-in stuff. Kristen Byers writes the Star Trek Voyager novels. There's going to be comics that she's overseeing. There's going to be a Discovery novel by David Mack. So they're
going to have support entity stuff right out of the gate.
Yes. So they're definitely putting a lot of money into this and making a big push and trying to get the merchandise out there. And that shows that they have a lot of faith in the show. So that makes me optimistic. Dave, what are your final thoughts on Discovery?
I'm going to go into that cautiously optimistic thing. Actually, I'm borderline optimistic, which feels very Star Trek. That's right.
That's a good way to
go. Which also sets me up for crushing disappointment if by chance it does not come through. I think it's going to come through. I think it has to, and I want it to, and all the pieces are in place for it to pull it off. So, with any luck.
Okay. Well, here's looking at you, Star Trek Discovery. Bryan Fuller, please don't let us down. And that's going to be it for now. We're going to sign off.
Live long and prosper, y'all.
Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at TX Trek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fatherlyactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.